couldn't do my first cookbook without adding my very famous mac and cheese. It is to die for, and you can find it in Dinner with Justine, and I'm going to make it for you right now. Now, in a large pot, we're going to start with the bechamel, the sauce of this dish. A little bit of butter, about 50 grams of butter, with a hint of olive oil. Now, I always add a little bit of olive oil with the butter, so the butter doesn't burn. Swirl it around the pan. And while it's starting to melt, I can get on with the vegetables. A little bit of celery and a little bit of onion. Now, I don't add carrot to this because I don't like the speckles of orange in my mac and cheese. So just the two for this, so not the classic mirepoix, along with a little bit of salt. And then just allow this to cook down to soften. This is going to take about 5 to 8 minutes. Now, while this is slowly cooking, I can get onto the crumb. The crumb is so easy to do. In a little food processor, I'm going to blitz some walnuts. Now, walnuts, cheese, ham, mustard, they all love each other. They're fantastic flavours together. So a big handful of whole walnuts. Now I'm going to add 1 clove of garlic and some lemon zest to this. I'm only going to add half of the lemon zest now and add a little bit at the end. Now the lid goes on and I'm going to blitz this or pulse it until a fine crumb forms. Okay, looking good. This is the consistency that I'm looking for. Now, the walnuts are the same size as my breadcrumbs, and I'm going to add roughly around the same amount of breadcrumbs to walnuts. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and then I'll give it a really good mix just to coat all the bread and the walnuts in the olive oil. Great. Now that's ready to be toasted in a pan. We'll come back to this later, but I can smell these onions and they're smelling good. They're looking fantastic too, so we can continue on with this. Now that they're softened, in with some flour. Now when you're making a bechamel, it's always the same amount of flour to butter. So 50 grams of butter to 50 grams of plain flour. And we need to cook off this plain flour. So give that a stir and toast it in the pan, and you'll see it thicken up, and that's okay, but just constantly stir that. And now we can start adding the milk. Now I'm going to turn the heat down because I don't want it to be too hot. Perfect. And little by little, just like you were doing any white sauce or bechamel at home, you want to add small amounts so it thickens up. So stir the first bit in. And then after this amount, I'm going to add the rest of the milk, bring the heat up, constantly stir, and again, it's going to thicken up and become really glossy, and that's when I'm going to start to add some very interesting flavours. These crumbs are looking fantastic. They're toasty and golden brown. Now I'm going to just bring over a big pot of water. I'm also going to season this with some salt. And now we can cook our macaroni. This is 500 grams of macaroni. So I'm going to place all of this into the water. And macaroni is so small, it takes no time at all to cook. And when I'm cooking a lot of pasta like this, I always like to put this in a big pot. Nothing worse than cooking pasta in a small pot, and everything will really stick together. So lots of space, so all of the pasta can move around freely and cook evenly. Okay, while that's cooking, let's finish off this crumb. See how crunchy this is? It looks so good. I'm going to add extra flavour to it. So some more lemon zest. Perfect. And a good amount of parsley. Don't add the parsley to this crumb when it's still really hot because it's going to discolour this parsley. So in, a little bit more there, and then we'll give it a toss. And now let's get back to this sauce. I can add some Dijon mustard, give that a stir. And now for the spices. My spice choice is smoked paprika, so a good amount of smoked paprika in there, and some nutmeg. Nutmeg and ham and cheese are really great friends, so add a good amount of nutmeg in there. And I haven't seasoned this with salt yet, so a pinch of salt. Being wary not to put too much salt because I am going to add cheese to this and I'm going to add ham to this. Stir that in, you'll see that colour changing now. Now I want a little bit of heat in this bechamel sauce, so I'm going to add Tabasco. Tabasco has a unique spiciness to it, so I think it goes fantastically. So I'm going to add 2 or 3 little shakes, and you can leave it out for the kiddies if you're making this for them, or what I do sometimes if I've got kids coming over and eating this mac and cheese is just put the Tabasco on the side so the adults can add some Tabasco at the end. Now we can add the cheese. So Gruyere cheese, a few big handfuls of that. Now the heat can go off. Allow that Gruyere cheese to melt. You could also use cheddar for this, fantastic. And the Parmesan could go in now. Great. One last stir. And now we can add our pasta into the sauce. And I like to undercook my pasta just a little bit because it's going to continue cooking in the bechamel. Strain it off really well from that water, because if it's too watery, this thick bechamel isn't going to stick to it. So a few big spoonfuls of this. And that's the pasta in. I'll get rid of that pot. Bring this closer to me. And now I add the ham. Now, a lot of people use a bit of bacon, some prosciutto, but I think ham has to be included in the mac and cheese. The smoky saltiness of it is fantastic. So all we do now is fold this all together. Oh, and listen to that. That can only be one sound. That is a mac and cheese kind of sound. Oh. I could eat all of this. It is so gooey. It's so lush. And look at the cheese, all the stringy cheese. It's so good. When I'm cooking this at home, this goes into a big platter and then I sprinkle all of these crumbs on the top. If you want to make it a little bit more elegant, you can place it on individual plates. I'll do that for myself today. So get a nice amount and pile it up. One more spoonful because I can't help myself. I love it too much. And now for these crunchy crumbs, sprinkle that on the plate and over the top. That is the seriously delicious mac and cheese. If you make that for anyone, you are going to be the most popular person in the house, hands down.